Okay. Yes, that's better. To the side there, because then.
Oh.
Okay. A couple of people got moved from that area because they were obscuring the view of my bed's profile for the online. Yes, it was this morning.
What the rest is done?
No. Okay, let's start by saluting the visual. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dharmaya. Namo Dharmaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Namah. Namo So welcome again to everyone, especially those of us who joined here for the session last night UK time. So before I say a bit about the theme of the retreat, there are one or two little housekeeping things for those of us who are here at Adhisthana. See how few I can manage to do. Yeah. First thing is, please do not bring anything which would use Wi-Fi or Bluetooth into the shrine room or into the space above the shrine room during the sessions, because it could interfere with the microphones, and that will be frustrating for those of us who are trying to follow online. Yeah, so please don't do that. And then the other thing is that here at Adhisthana, we're going into silence at 8 o'clock this evening. So at the beginning of the evening session here, for the foreseeable future. And if you're practicing with us at home, you might not be going into silence for the next few days. Your children or whatever might not appreciate that. But it's worth just having a think about what you can do to give yourself really the best chance to go deep over these next few days. Yeah, there are you remember there are one or two suttas in the Pali Canon where the Buddha says, well, in a week you could gain enlightenment just by practicing this. And if a week's not very long, but it also can be long enough for something quite significant to happen, something even life-changing to happen sometimes. So it's worth really giving ourselves the best chance, the best opportunity for something really rich and freeing to happen over these few days. And often there's kind of resistance to start with. You're just in the world of your mobile phone, or you're in the world of other things that you've been engaged with, and it feels like you'll really lose something if you put them down. But if we really focus on what we could gain, if we give ourselves the space, if we give ourselves the time, so that we can really experience deeply, really worth it. So yeah, see if there's an equivalent, whatever it is for you, whatever helps set up the conditions for us all to go deep together over this week. So we're going to be looking at this song of Milarepa, which in the translation that Bhante used when he did a seminar on it, it's called The Shepherd's Search for Mind. There's a more recent translation by Christopher Stagg, where he talks about cowherds rather than shepherds. So I've been meaning to ask one of my friends who speak Tibetan, what is it? How could you kind of decide that it's shepherds or cowherds? But it probably it's just herders. They could have been herding goats or yucks, who knows. Anyway, we're going to look at this text of Milarepa, and I don't need to say anything about Milarepa really. He's one of the most extraordinary figures in Tibetan Buddhism. So much so that there he is 1,000 years ago, in one of the most inaccessible countries in the world, living in some of the most inaccessible places in that inaccessible country. But there's something so deep and powerful about his experience of the Dharma. His mind is so free, his energy is so liberated, his heart is so open, that the effect that he has goes down through the centuries, down through 1,000 years, and round the world. If you want a sort of example of just the power of practice, just the power of someone who has practiced, then Milarepa is a very good example to take. So yeah, about 1,000 years ago, he's practicing and eventually teaching, and particularly singing these different songs. And some of them get collected, and again, it also seems like the story of Milarepa kind of grows over time. You get different versions of his life and collections of the songs, and they gradually get added to. And then about 300 or 400 years later, in the 15th century, there's a guy called Sangharakshita. Sang is a part of central Tibet. Nyern means the madman, and Herika is a name of a sort of tantric deity. Sangharakshita. He practices he goes into a monastery when he's young. Right from very early, he has a very strong sense of the frustrations of samsara, and a sense of really wanting to go for refuge. So he practices, and it's said that by the time he's 23, he's realized the nature of things. And then he lives as a yogi, and unlike most Tibetan yogis, he sort of lives like an Indian yogi. He lives like some of the Kapalikas, these guys who would have, wear bits of bone and sort of bits of corpse, sort of threads of tendons and ligaments, to make necklaces of bones and things, which was that was really unusual in Tibet. So people, used to really kind of question what he was doing, and he'd act in kind of these crazy ways. But the effect that he had on people was a Dharma effect. I mean, he really upset quite a few people. He got threatened by various people. But although you can have this kind of crazy wisdom that is just crazy and isn't very wise, he actually had the crazy wisdom. And in later life, he then started teaching, and you hear less about the crazy wisdom and you start just hearing more about the teaching. And he started particularly following Milarepa. He lived in places where Milarepa lived, he practiced where Milarepa practiced. And then he had a vision of Naropa, who's one of the teachers in that lineage, coming from Tilopa to Naropa to Marpa to Milarepa. When Naropa encouraged him to bring together the life story of Milarepa in the songs and turn them into these volumes, and woodblock printing had been invented by this stage. So he produced these things, and then they were widely sort of spread around Tibet, and that was the start, if you like, of them being spread around the world and ending up with us practicing around the world this week, looking at some of these songs. So Sangharakshita is quite an amazing yogi in his own right. And the 100,000 songs in the life of Milarepa are really, they're real gems. So in 1976, Bhante did a seminar on this Shepherd's Search for Mind text, and I was on it. I'd been ordained for almost 2 years. I was chair of the Brighton Buddhist Centre, and we had a number of mitras, including a young guy called Richard Hutton, who was going to be ordained by Bhante on this retreat on which we studied the Shepherd's Search for Mind. He was going to be ordained along with another guy called Gary Hennessy. So we went up to Broomhouse Farm in Norfolk, and there were, I think, 4 of us, order members, me and Lokamitra, a couple of other people, and about half a dozen mitras, including Richard. And these few days, one evening they had their private ordinations, and I was Richard's Kalyana Mitra. And after the private ordination, he was only 17, and he was completely overcome with sort of emotion and inspiration. And so he said, he sort of beckoned to me and sort of wanted to go for a walk. So we sort of went out for a walk out in the dark, sort of through these trails in this sort of big sort of coniferous forest around Brumhar's farm. And it was near an RAF base called Lakenheath. And you could hear occasionally this great sort of roaring sound when the military aircraft kind of, sort of were kind of revving their engines. And you'd see the sort of flash of the flames sort of like reflected through the forest. It was like walking in this forest with dragons in the distance. And there's Richard, who's just had this private ordination, and we're in silence, but he's bursting with it. And eventually he says, Padma Vajra! I'm called Padma Vajra! Oh, yes! It was fantastic. And Gary Hennessy was called Ratnaguna, some of you may know. So over the course of those few days, as well as bringing Padma Vajra and Ratnaguna into the order, Bhante also studied some of these Milarepa texts, and we studied the Shepherd Search. And Bhante, unpacked it incredibly sort of fluently, and you can find an edited version in the complete works now in one of the volumes on Vachumpa and the art of discipleship. But at that stage, Bhante, he sort of inspired us, and he gave us whatever understanding we could reasonably gather at that stage of what Milarepa was saying. But he didn't really kind of say, and this is how you practice, looking into the nature of mind. Because, as I say, I'd been ordained for like almost 2 years. I was a relatively senior order member at that point. There were probably only about 75 order members in the world at that point. So, we were still working out what it meant to be an order member. We were working out, what it meant to go for refuge to the three jewels. We were still, getting our basic kind of ethical practice together. I think we were tremendously inspired by Milarepa. But yes, there wasn't a sense of Bhante really kind of pointing us in that direction to go and practice Mahamudra and Dzogchen. But now the order has had a lot more practice under its belt. It's been going for far longer. And so, I hope that over these few days we can do at least something to look into the wisdom aspect of things, as well as opening our hearts to Milarepa and opening our hearts to the lineage. So we'll see what we can do. So I'll be going through the text of the Shepherd's Search, but not doing it so much as a study text. Ratnaguna, he led study on this in the study convention not so long ago at connected with Adhisthana. So we're not going to go into all the details of things. I'm going to more pick out things which I hope will be useful to guide us, point us in the direction of going more deeply into our experience of things. At the same time, there will be questions, and I'll see what I can do, as usual, to answer questions. And as I usually do, for those of us at Adhisthana, I'll put a begging bowl outside the shrine room, and if you've got questions, you can put them in there. If you're online, then you can put questions in the chat, and I won't get them immediately, but I will get them. So I'll do my best to answer questions either directly or by sort of weaving into the teaching things that hopefully give you pointers to the answers of those questions. Or even if not that, the questions give me some idea of how the teaching is landing and what people are do understand what you don't get and what questions it's raising for your issues. So feel free to ask questions if you have them. And these sessions, this session and the next one each day. So if this is session 1, then the afternoon session is session 2, and what's the evening session here will be session 3. I'm going to call them 1, 2, and 3 because if you're in Australia or somewhere else, times of day are a little different. So session 1 and session 2 we'll be looking at the text and unpacking it. Session 3 will be more meditation or devotion in some way. That's the plan. And session 1 and session 2, I'll be unpacking the text, but we'll be doing a mixture of exploring the text and then going into meditation, and I'll be guiding meditations with the aim of taking into our experience what's being talked about some of the time. So in that way, we kind of, it's kind of listening, reflecting, and meditating. You hear a bit of Dharma, I'll unpack it, maybe we have some questions, and then we meditate on it. Okay, is that clear? Okay. So let's meditate. We'll do that for the next 25 minutes. And could I have a couple of volunteers for a small mission? From Trust, yes, Sangharakshita, Sri Darkin, thank you. So a lot of us are still landing on the retreat. So for now, we won't concern ourselves with the nature of mind. We'll get ourselves a little bit grounded and see what happens after that. So let's start by not doing anything at all. Just appreciating that we have this space and this time with no demands on us. Just a little space of freedom. Nothing at all to do. Just breathe easily, as best we can. Now let's spend a little time gathering some resources and support to carry into this time together. Let's start by taking our awareness down to the earth, down to the ground. Feeling the support of the earth. However we're feeling, there's that stability that we can draw on. We can relax and give it our weight. And then there's the support of a meditation posture that, as much as possible, helps our energy to move freely. That promotes awareness. And taking a minute or two to feel into the body. Just as it is. With as much kindness as we can find. And last night, during the dedication ceremony, we put more support, more resources in place. We created the 3 circles of protection. So we could take our way out until we come to the great ring of soft open lotuses. It's the qualities of the lotuses that protect us. And beyond the lotuses, the great Vajra wall. Completely unshakable, and yet somehow dynamic, full of energy. Beyond the Vajra wall, the crackling wisdom flames, burning up confusion, burning up delusion. These three circles protect and support our retreat. We can call them to mind whenever we need that help, that support of those qualities. And wherever we are in the world, we're all seated as part of one retreat community in the mandala. So we have the support of one another. To benefit the order and the world. At the center of the mandala are all the qualities of awakening. However they appear to us. Of the Buddha, of the whole refuge tree, of our yidam, could be just a formless sense of a kind of fountain, a spring of qualities of love and peace and generosity and freedom and so on. That's the deepest resource we can draw on. Like a spring from which we come to drink, to quench our thirst for meaning, for happiness, for fulfillment, for freedom, for understanding how things are. Let's also have a sense of those qualities appearing through Milarepa. Again, a whole lineage of teaching and practice coming down through the centuries, through people like Sangharakshita, the life and songs of Milarepa pervade Tibetan Buddhism. Nearly all Bhante's teachers would have studied them, would be devoted to Milarepa. Bhante did so many seminars on Milarepa and the songs. So we can draw on all that. And before we finish, just having a sense of how Milarepa was singing songs, yes, for shepherds and yogins 1,000 years ago, but he was singing for all humanity. He had a heart as wide as the world. He was singing for all time, for wherever there was suffering. He was singing for us. So let's take him and his songs into our heart and have them as a resource to draw on. And after the meditation, Those of us at Adhisthana could take a copy of The Shepherd's Search for Mind off the shrine with a sense of really receiving this teaching, this deep teaching about the nature of mind, Milarepa's example. So it's not just a study text. It's a real communication from Milarepa, something that can help us to be understanding, to be free. And those of us online, the text will be available. So do help yourselves to texts. And I didn't need my 2 volunteers, but thank you for volunteering. You get the merit without doing them.